All right, what I want to do is with, let's say, these three objects here, let's just command group them really quick. This is a way that I can mirror across. I can duplicate and mirror these controls. So I'm going to go ahead and say duplicate that group, and let's give it a scale in the Z direction as a -1 scale. Right now, that's just a little bit of a trick to duplicate those controllers across the rig. So now I'm going to go in though, and I'm going to ungroup both of these. So I'm going to say edit, ungroup. Okay, and now I'm going to make sure that I have this. Let's select all of those controllers and let's freeze the transformations on them. Now, if this whole joint hierarchy has been mirrored, right, so should those pivot points should be right in the correct places. So if I kind of eyeballed, oh, this is the left wing and then the right wing, but they're not completely mirrored, like doing any of these kind of mirroring tools and tricks is not going to work. It's going to just be a pain. But because I've done all of that in my perfect symmetry across my model, these controllers are placed right where they need to be, and I just zero out. Now let me go here and let's just rename these. So let's get rid of that 1 and let's name this R. Here, the same thing. R and R. Okay. So let's, because I ungrouped them, that hierarchy I created is no longer here. Let's just drag and drop this wing here. Let's drag and drop this wing under the shoulder here. That tail control, I think I want the knees because the knees are attached to the tail control here. I will I will command select both of these and drag these onto that tail control. So I'm starting to create a kind of control hierarchy for my control rig, just like I did for the joint hierarchy that got created by default when I placed those joints. So I want all of these now, I think, to fall under that root control. Let's drag and drop it there. Although I have all of these, I'm just going to group. I'm going to just group all of these. And I'm just going to move this back up here. This is the hips. I'm just going to name it hips control. Okay. So when I hit the root, selects everything. That hip control is there. Neck control. So I don't really want to be messing with this. I want to mess with the whole root control, the neck, the tail, which also controls, if I rotate that tail, those knees will go with it. I don't think I'll ever really want to do that. I mean, I might want to extend it this way, but again, I really did want to have a couple more joints in there, but oh well. Oh well for this demo. And then here as well, everything kind of moves, although these have not been constrained yet. So these have been constrained, but not this side. So let's go ahead and control the right, constrain the right side of the body. Let's do the knee, select that knee controller, select that right knee joint, parent constraint. Let's do the wing here, the right shoulder. Let's constrain that to the right wing here, parent constraint. Let's open up this right wing control and parent it to the right wing mid and say constraint, parent constraint. And now I have my control rig. Now I'm able to use that control rig rather than using the joints. At this point, I might say shading, turn off X-ray joints. So I don't see the joints at all. I just see my controls and I still have the geometry. I'm not able to select it here. I can also change the selection method here so I can turn off mesh and I don't have to use my display layer. So there's a couple ways to do the same thing. So at this point, like if I don't want to select joints and I don't want to select the mesh, I can just have this. There maybe are a couple more controllers that I want to place on this bird. I might want like a tail joint. So I have this joint here. Let's make sure I can still select the joint. And the joints are restricted here. Let's make sure I can select them. So I might want to, let's like just create a couple locators. I'm going to move this locator here. I'm going to turn off snap to point for a moment. Just going to move this locator here. I'm going to duplicate. Let's move this. Let's also select the root control, select all in hierarchy, and let's just zero out those rotation values. Everything's back to normal. I'm just going to create a couple other kind of controllers to control the tips of the wings. And to control the tip of the tail. I'm just going to go ahead and put that in a group. The reason even though there's only one object here, I'm just going to group it. And what that does is that that maintains the pivot position of this object here, but it gives me like I'm able to then duplicate across this whole thing. But before I do that, I'll go in here, hit D. Let's move this pivot. Make sure I have just Q selected. Let's go to the move tool, hit D, select this, move that pivot. Let's turn on snap to point again. Let's move that down here to this joint. Maybe I did this too soon. Let's X-ray those joints back on. Let's put that pivot point right there, hit D. And for this, let's say freeze the transformations of this locator. Let's do the same thing down here. Let's hit D. Let's move this to this joint. Can kind of zoom in to see, yes. Hit F, so I'm pivoting around this selected feature. Hit D again. F will frame it up, so I'm able to pivot around whatever I have selected. Okay. This I'm going to call tail control. This is the wing control. I probably will put one more. Looks like this needs to be. There's something up with this. This, I don't know if I zero it out. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Let me delete this tail, this left knee control for a moment. And let's also, the right knee control looks good, but the left knee looks wrong. I don't think let me go ahead and just redo this one controller here. Let me group it. I'm going to duplicate it, give it a scale in the X of -1. That will mirror it. Great. Let me ungroup, edit, ungroup. And let's ungroup this to edit, ungroup. Okay. Right knee control 1. I'm going to call this left knee control. And let's just reparent. So let's also freeze the transformations on this. Okay, and now let's reparent that right knee control or that left knee. Let's see. Yeah, the left knee control to the left knee. Okay, this naming convention's off. Let's change this to R. And let's change this to L. Just want to make sure that all of the names make sense. There's the left knee control, and it should be parented to the left knee. It's not yet. The right knee control, right knee parent. Let's make sure everything works right. Okay, that's working right. So then it's the left knee, and parent constraint. Okay. Now this should function right. Yes. Let's just make a couple more locators. I can use locators or I can use special curves or something. turn off snap to point. I'm gonna kind of move this down over here by the foot. Hit D to make sure that pivot is snapped, snap to point, snap to that joint there. D again, great. Freeze the transformations on this. I'm gonna wanna start to say that this is the left foot control. And then here, this is the left wingtip control. Okay. Let's group this. Group, Command G, duplicate, -Z scale, ungroup all of this. This now, left foot, this is right foot control, left foot control, left wingtip control, duplicate, -1 for that wing, so we can do the, right, and then let's ungroup all of this. Edit, ungroup. Okay, let's just ungroup each group. Ungroup. Ungroup. Okay, I have my left wing control there. This will be my right wing control. And because those pivots are in the right spot, let's also just select everything here, freeze the transformations on them, everything's zeroed out. And then let's make controls between them. The tail parent constraint, but let's do this tail control. And let's rename this tail end control, so I know exactly what that controls. Tail end, parent constraint, right foot, parent constraint, left foot, parent constraint, left wingtip to the left wingtip, parent constraint, right wingtip to the right wingtip, parent constraint. And let's make sure in the control hierarchy, everything is connected as it needs to be. This tail end, I'm gonna middle mouse button and drop it over that tail control. That way, when I rotate that tail control, I'm also moving the wing. Now you see these are constraint. This is why you want to make sure that all your controllers are in a hierarchy too, is because these joints here are constrained to these locators. So I want to make sure those locators are also within the hierarchy of this joint. Both of these foot controllers, let's drop those under that tail as well. And now when I rotate the tail, you know, that whole part of the bird goes with it. And I think I see why. Okay, this knee is wrong, and that is because this joint has a rotation on it. Let me again just quickly delete this parent constraint. And then this knee joint here, it was the left knee. I do want to make sure this is zeroed out. Okay, now that's back to where it needs to be. That was just tilted. Let's do that joint again. That's why this controller looked, controller was off. The whole thing was off before. Let's just redo this one more time. Let's just constrain these again, parent constraint. Okay, now that looks right to me. Everything's symmetrical. Everything's back to its basic position. And we're still working here on our hierarchy. Let's get these wing tips. The left wing tip needs to be a child of the left wing control. That way, when we move the wing control, that tip goes with it, that controller goes with it. Do the same thing with the right. And let's middle mouse and drop that under the right wing. And so now what we have is we have And I'm going to go ahead and actually group all of the geometry together. And I'm just going to call this geo. Okay. So I have the controls, I have our joints, and I have our geometry. Let me take those controllers. I'm going to middle mouse just to, I'm just going to rename this Finch Geo. Okay. Let me make a display layer for those joints. For those controllers too. And I'm just going to name this controls. And that way I can just turn on and off the visibility of anything here. Let's turn off the visibility of the joints, or we can go shading X-ray, turn that off. Make sure that we're only able to select here the points. We can select these individual locators or the different parts of the control rig.